combat or modern sport, winning is what it's all about.
I have to conquer a skill that I know absolutely nothing about.
But how do you win?
The History Channel car is history!
This man has learned the hard way. Now, he's ready to show you.
The year is 1400. You and your comrades face a very tough challenge. You have to take down the ultimate fighting machine of the Middle Ages. In a fight like this, an ordinary weapon just won't do. You need something extreme, something truly bizarre.
Now this type was known as the holy water sprinkler. Combines the techniques of a sword with the weight of an axe. It was called a Goddentag, billhook, crow's beak.
How to win with weird weapons of the Middle Ages. Say hello to the knight in plate armour. 250 pounds of muscle and precision steel. Skilled with the broadsword, tested in battle, one of the finest fighting men in history.
That is the medieval version of the tank, and he's coming towards us. So, how do we defeat him? Any ideas?
Shoot an arrow at him.
Yeah, well, we could fire an arrow at him if you were an extremely good shot with a very strong bow. At close range, the arrow might just penetrate that armour, but it's likely to bounce off him. How else? Come on, he's coming towards us. How else?
Crossbow?
Yeah, well, okay, there's a crossbow right there. Start winding it. It takes a minute to wind it up and load it. I don't think you've got time. Any other ideas? Come on, he's getting closer.
How about a handgun?
Handgun. Okay, well, the medieval handgun was incredibly inaccurate. And you just missed him. And he's right here. He's got through. I think you can stop whining now, Finn. So what do? We have a knight in plate armour standing in front of us. We need to know what weird weapons we can use to win against the plate-armoured knight.
The plate-armoured knight was the terror of the Middle Ages. Time and again, armoured knights defeated hordes of unarmoured foot soldiers. They were such an awesome force that a handful of well-equipped men could defend a castle against an entire army.
You have a number of choices against plate armour. You can crush it with something heavy, try and crack it open with an axe, or puncture it with a spike. Alternatively, you can try and pierce it with a short, sharp, stiff blade. Or you can go for the gaps. Every armour has them, areas that have to remain flexible and cannot be covered by plate. Unfortunately, there aren't very many of them. But you can try behind the knees, under the armpits, up and under the breastplate, or indeed any joints of the armour, including the visor. Every armour has a weakness. Somewhere.
The trick, of course, is finding your opponent's weakness before he finds yours.
So there he is. Any suggestions?
We could push him over.
Yeah, we could. I suppose if we got close enough to him, we might just be able to push him over, so let's try it. Now, he's used to wearing armour. He's worn it all his life. This armour is fitted to him, and he's just going to get straight back up. Anything else?
Hit him with a really big sword.
We could do, yeah. There's a big sword over there. Hand it over. Let's see if that'll work. Now, first of all, if we want to hit him with something really big, we'll have to get close enough to do it, if he allows us to, so let's try it. Here we go. Of course, he's got his own sword, and it's a lot lighter than mine, so that's probably the last stroke that I am ever going to get to make. So, next idea.
Would a really sharp sword go straight through the armour?
Well, it might. So let's go and find out. All right, guys, this is a sharpened sword of modern steel, probably as good as anything they had. And here is a piece of plate armour, very thin plate armour, but Tim thinks that he can thrust this sword through that, so let's have a go. Put your goggles on. All right, here we go. This is a once only, Tim, get it right, yeah?
Ready?
Yeah, go Tim.
Congratulations, Tim! At arm's length, with two hands, with all your strength, you managed to puncture it by about an inch. In the meantime, you've been hit 3 times by the man who's been wearing that plate armour, so I think, on the whole, we need to look for some other ideas, don't you?
The evolution of specialised weapons actually began before plate armour was widely used. Until the 13th century, most knights wore a shirt of mail, woven out of interlocking iron rings.
Chris, come on up here. Now, your opponent is a mail-armoured knight. He has a weapon. You have two choices. You either get a longer weapon than he has, in which case you can strike him without him striking you, or alternatively, you have to get inside that guard of his. So, for that, you need a shield. If you have a shield in your left hand, you can parry his weapon away and move in. Good. Now you're close enough to hit him. So what are you going to hit him with? Well, several choices. Let's try this one. An axe. Now this is a double-handed axe. It'll certainly go through that mail armour, but there's no way you can use it with a single hand. So with a shield, you have to compromise. You have to use a smaller axe. Now that will go through him, hit him in the shoulder.
But even a small axe could be unwieldy and inaccurate, and it didn't have the versatility of a sword. So the armourers came up with the first weird weapon, the falchion, designed to help you win against mail armour.
Now the falchion, it's a very interesting weapon. Combines the techniques of a sword with the weight of an axe. All the weight is behind here, behind the point of percussion. Now this means that it was an extremely effective weapon against mail, could cleave right through it. Question is, how good was it against plate armour?
Not very. Maybe we should try something else.
Another adaptation of the sword was this late medieval broadsword. It's much shorter than the old cutting sword, and it tapers to this extremely sharp point. This is a magnificent weapon, but it needs to be made of the highest quality steel, otherwise it will shatter in combat. The most extreme version was this, the estoc, a purely thrusting weapon designed for thrusting into the gaps of armour.
But thrusting swords like the estoc were only good if you were well-trained and highly skilled. In the heat of battle, you might need something a little more basic.
One of the most unexpected weapons of the Middle Ages was also one of the simplest, the wooden club. Apply a bit of technology, and you get this, the mace. Usually made of steel, between 4 and 6 pounds, with these longitudinal ribs on the end. Now these would make sure that any blow against an unarmoured man would be deadly. It also increased the effectiveness of any blow against plate. These came in various styles. You could have spherical and oval ones with spikes, and even very fancy ones like this. This was a knight's weapon for use against other knights. The mace was an extremely aggressive weapon, but to use it effectively, you had to get in close. You could even deflect the occasional sword stroke. It is usually used with a small shield. Medieval battles often developed into massive crushes as the rear ranks piled in behind. And in these circumstances, the mace was the ideal weapon to have. This man is at my mercy. But wait, now I have to ask myself a question. Not, how do I finish him off? But who is he?
Why does it matter? You'll find out in a minute. Here's where we left off.
This man is at my mercy.
But who is he? So why does it matter? Well, if the man on the ground is a knight from a wealthy family, you want to keep him alive. You can get big money if he or his family pay a ransom for his safe return. On the other hand,
if this is a man-at-arms, not a knight, then he's a dangerous beast, and he could recover at any moment. You're in the middle of a battle here, he's surrounded by his colleagues. You could keep bashing him, but he might roll over, even grab your weapon, so you have to act fast. The moment he's down, you've got to be on him. With this. Now this is where it gets really nasty. Every knight carried one of these, a dagger, purely stabbing weapon called a misericord. It was called the Dagger of Mercy. That's because when you were about to stab him, he could plead for mercy.
Mercy!
And if you weren't interested, you could stab him in the face. Or if his visor was down, you could simply stab him straight through the eye slots. Or you could find a way into the armour, through the plates, under the armpit, and into the body. Alternatively, find some gap in the breastplates and squeeze it in that way. There is one more alternative, but that doesn't bear thinking about.
The mace was a good weapon, but you might need repeated blows to actually knock down a well-armoured man. So how do you get the same effect with a single strike? The answer is the flail. The flail was an agricultural tool of ancient origin. It was a wooden club hinged by rope or chain to a long staff. Usually it was used for threshing corn, but replace the wooden club with an iron one and you could use it for thrashing men. 6 feet long with a 2-foot swingle, the great flail was especially popular in Eastern Europe and Russia. But it really came into its own as a single-handed weapon.
The military flail, also known as the ball and chain, came in many varieties. This one here is a double-handed one with a spiked weight on the end. This will increase the impact of the stroke enormously. An alternative is this one. Extremely heavy, very nasty. 2 spiked balls here. With these heavy weights on the end, this will be very unmanageable. You need at least 2 hands to use it. So the usual one is this. Very simple, short haft. Some kind of safety chain or rope for your hand, because these are very easy weapons to lose in combat. A short haft, a staple attached to a chain attached to the spiked weight. Now this type is known as the holy water sprinkler. Very amusing. Helmet, please. Now, as you will find in practice, this is an extremely dangerous weapon. Not just for your opponent. In fact, you're far more likely to hit yourself with one of these if you don't know what you're doing than to hit anyone else. Now, the flail can strike with enormous impact, but it can also strike you, so you have to keep your arm extended. You need at least 1 swing to get up to power, and once you're up to speed, paradoxically, it's easier to control at high speed than at low. If you ever stop it, you lose control of it. You've got to keep that ball swinging. So, let's have a go. The flail is a terrifying weapon to face. Not only do you have to watch the man, you have to watch that constantly circling ball. Now you can avoid it, or deflect it, or try and get under it. But it's rather like waiting for a bus. Just when you're not expecting it, one comes along. Or 2, or 3. Oh. Now it's my turn.
As good as it is, the flail isn't perfect. It's a lousy defensive weapon, and if you stop swinging it, even for a second, that's all your opponent needs.
What's worse, it's absolutely exhausting.
Another alternative weapon is the hammer. The wooden mallet was a tool for the peasant and for the common soldier. It could also be a pretty handy weapon.
The knightly version was the war hammer. This was an excellent weapon. You could crack armour with this side. The hammerhead was often serrated so that it would bite into the armour, not glide off it. And on this side, a long narrow spike that could puncture plate. Here's another one, all steel, looking like a can opener. These spikes were known as the bec de Corbin, the crow's beak, and they were light enough for the old 1-2. 1-2. This type was called a poinçon, with a single or double curved spike. Looked exactly like an ice pick, and is extremely efficient. Of course, the problem with all armour-piercing weapons is that you only get 1 chance to get it right, because they get completely stuck in the armour!
That's the problem with alternative weapons. Just when you think you've got a winner, there's a new hitch. But no one said defeating an armoured knight would be easy. In a moment, we go long and lean, with a high-tech spear and a lethal tree trimmer. As we've seen, most weird weapons were inspired by existing weapons that couldn't quite do the job. The spear is a good example. Against plate armour, it was ineffective, and the wooden shaft made it very vulnerable.
What the common foot soldier needed was a weapon that could make him a match for those men-at-arms in their highly expensive armour. Now, the spear was virtually useless for that, but he could try this, the Aalspieß, the eel spear. Now, this has an armour-piercing point on the end of a very long, slender steel blade with this rondelle here to give you some protection. Now, this was a magnificent weapon. The advantage of the Aalspieß was that you could aim for the cracks and the chinks in the plate armour, or you could try and pierce right through it. Now, with the Aalspieß, you could keep coming back, because this long steel blade was not easy to break. The disadvantages were that it was an extremely heavy weapon, and all the weight at the business end. You couldn't have a shield with it because you needed both hands, which meant that you had to absolutely commit yourself to the blow. And if you failed... The odds seemed stacked against the common foot soldier. What he needed was a weapon that could cut, thrust, and chop at the same time. So, he found one.
The billhook was an agricultural tool with a long, hooked blade. It is still used today for hedging and lopping branches. As a weapon, it is of great antiquity. It was used by some of Alexander the Great's infantry.
This was the medieval version of the billhook. A long single-edged blade which curved into a hook, a spike at the end, and a fluke on the back ridge of the blade. This was the most popular medieval polearm, relatively easy to make, and used throughout Europe. This is the medieval billhook. Now, we infantry, we're not armed in plate like you guys. We may have leather and cloth and jacks and maybe some mail if we're really pretty well equipped, but nothing like the sort of technology that you've got on your fronts and backs. But at least we've got this weapon. This can be made by a good, skilled local blacksmith. The blade itself divided into these three: the spike, the hook, the fluke at the back. Step forward a minute. There's something about armour which you will immediately notice as you're walking, which is that it gets caught in things. There's lots of bits sticking out, lots of cracks that you can hook into, yeah, and just catch. So there's the elbows there, there's the shoulders here, there's bits of the body itself that you can hook into, and there you've got him like a fish. Now, of course, you have to get close enough to be able to do that, so what you want to do first is hit him hard, either with the spike. It'll go straight through armour if you hit him hard enough, or alternatively, you can use the fluke at the back. At high speed, would go straight through that armour. Or say that you were riding by me on a horse, so I'm down here as an infantryman. Ride by me and I can sweep you straight out of your saddle. Now, you can use the butt against armour like that to push someone back. You can swing it around just to keep them at a distance. So, it's a pretty good all-round weapon. But frankly, against a really good swordsman, you're not going to have much of a chance. Now, I could parry you, cut to my head. I could parry you there, but I'm completely exposed. Do it again. So I need to at least do that and clear it. Yeah? The problem is that you're going to come straight back cutting at me, so let's have a little routine here. We go to the head. I'm going to clear it, straight back in the middle, there. All right, now, I chose to parry because I thought he was going to give me a cut. He wasn't. He was going to give me a thrust. So I'm dead. You can see my problem. I can only make one mistake.
Our arsenal of weird weapons is just about complete, so maybe it's time for a short review. First, the falchion. Then, the mace. Followed by the flail, the hammer and the crow's beak, the Aalspieß, the billhook.
There you go.
They're all good, but are they good enough to help our team win its challenge against the plate-armoured knight?
This is one of the weirdest weapons of the Middle Ages. A long club fitted with iron spikes. It was a traditional weapon, roughly made by local blacksmiths. It was called a Goddentag, which means good day. The Flemish must have had a sense of humour. As they hit their opponents, they would say, Goddentag. It was used for thrusting, Goddentag. For striking, Goddentag. And for slashing open the flanks of horses. Goddentag! Very nasty.
How nasty? Well, in 1302, at the Battle of Courtrai, a magnificent French army came face to face with the Flemish Goddentag.
This absolutely simple, homemade weapon wielded by untrained peasants and shopkeepers, was up against mailed, mounted knights of the finest army in Europe. So, who would you put your money on?
If you bet on the French, you lost. The Flemish peasants carried the day. In the right hands, the Goddendag is indeed a fearsome weapon, but there's only one sure way to win against a plate-armored knight. This is where it all began, remember? Before we had the arsenal of weird weapons, our team would have had little chance against this armoured knight. But now, against 3 knights, with a little help from the Goddendag, the flail, the crow's beak, and a few friends, well, it's hardly a fight at all.
Our team have learned how to win against the armoured knight. But all the weapons we've seen in action have one thing in common. No matter how weird and wonderful the weapon, what matters is the man behind it.